Good morning. Well, yesterday in Quebec, Charlottesville was repeated with a minor difference. And the difference was that the police intervened in time and there was no loss of life. And then Prime Minister tweeted, Canada is not immune to racist violence and hate. Is Canada racist? All that hullabaloo, all that noise that Canada happens to be the best country in the world, that this is a multicultural country, that this is a country where everybody has the same right, except the indigenous people, of course, and that has been exploded. But then this is something not new. Racism in Canada is not something which has come bold from the blue. Remember the time when you were spat upon the Indians and the Pakistanis and called Pakis. Remember the time when the Chinese were brought in and they were called chinky-eyed. But here, there's a curious thing. There's a reverse racism as well, or rather, racism coming even from the browns and the blacks. When the blacks say only blacks is better, when some of the browns say that the whites exploited us and enslaved us, so we have come here to avenge our slavery, these are all a form of racism. When people start misusing multiculturalism and try to extol the values of their own culture, that is racism. But let's come to the classic racism of the whites as well. Ku Klux Klan, KKK, the infamous one, is not new to India. It's not only in the south of USA. Imagine the hooded men in Canada in 1920s and also in the 1970s. And you have not seen the last of them. You saw them in Vancouver day before and in Montreal yesterday. As a matter of the first time KKK was seen was observed in 1921. There's an article in Maclean's. I read it and I found Night Riders came to Canada. It contains news that they have started to recruit women as well. And they said they were recruiting 5,000 people a week. So, racism is inground. And there are two reasons for that. A, most of the people are so deep rooted in their prejudices that outwardly they're supposed to be God-fearing. They're supposed to love every human being. But inside they do not want that their system be challenged. And when the refugees come or when the immigrants come, and when they especially come in places which are well placed, then the growing fear starts coming. You remember the first World War veteran turned refugee came to Canada, Matthew Bullock. And he became, in 1922, a headline news. There was warrant for his arrest in North Carolina. But he was not extradited by Canada. They said no, he would be here because he's a First World War veteran. But the protests that took place were terrible. And you can imagine that today, if you look at the whole thing, there are at least 100 active groups of white supremacists and racists, which, as judged by Barbara Perry and Ryan Scrivens, I'm saying these two are the racist experts. 100 groups on the rise. Imagine in a population of 36 million people, there are 100 groups which are dedicated to racism. And I'm still not counting the groups of the immigrants, some violent professing groups. So the rally, what happened in Vancouver? Basically, that was nothing but an expression of racism. And now, Toronto, next month, you are going to have a discussion on nationalist movement in Canada and future of our country, and that shall be by Canadian Nationalist Party, a racist party. The same is another party, Cultural Party of Canada. That's also racist. Now, there are groups, you will be amazed that there's a group which is dedicated to anti-immigration called Soldiers of Odin. And that has been launched already. There's a radio Pobble talk shows. And the hates against the Muslims increased between 2014 and 2015 by 60%. When it comes to preventing terror attacks, till today, the far-right extremists have not been taken very seriously. Most of the police work and the intelligence agencies are largely focused on the Islamist groups like ISIS. Mainstream media tries to ignore and whitewash racism. Walrus is far-righted pundits are routinely welcomed on the media to discuss. And far-right media has found an audience. Look at Rebel Media by Ezra Levin, a personal guy whom I like. But one of his promoters, Faith Goldie, is terrible. And then, last week, some brown shirts displayed themselves as a part of that rightist group. All of us here, let's not forget, racism doesn't always announce itself with Nazi slogans. Simply because a man says, "Hail Hitler," or extends and gives a face salute the way Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also did some time back, that alone is not an evidence of racism. Imagine, and that's a reality, not imagine, think. Think of that indigenous man who went to a hospital, was made to wait for hours to be treated for bladder infection, and then he died of the septic shock. And reason? The medical staff on duty thought that he's drunk and is sleeping it off. They didn't even have the courtesy of judging whether he's really bad or not. Imagine again, a white police officer and his brother beat a black teenager, making him blind, half blind. And then they arrest the young man and the assault to cover up the assault charges. That is racism. I don't mind people carrying flames and wearing hoods, saying that, okay, we are racist, throw the blacks and the browns. I wouldn't mind that. But I would mind the way this has happened, that you treat a young student and bully him and beat him. I would consider that bad when somebody spits on you and says, "Get out, Paki." I would consider it bad when they say, "These ragheads, towel heads are tents." I may not accept burqa. I do not. But I would not call a woman traveling with a burqa on as a mobile tent. Because I know the implication of that woman, she's being forced. Nobody wants to be enveloped in that bulky garment of one's own volition. So that is racism. Racism is thinking. Racism is an action, day-to-day action. You go for an interview. You remember we discussed some time back that people having Asian, Indian, Pakistani, Chinese name have 60% less chance of even being called for interview. This we had discussed last week. That is racism. When you go to a party, a networking party, and when you find the congregation is not that mixed as you would expect, that is racism. Now, how to do it? The change starts with listening and learning. And it has to be done both sides. When you say black lives matter, yes, they do. But white lives also matter. Brown lives also matter. So the proper thing would be to say all lives matter rather than just saying black lives matter. Go to any American or Toronto chapter of the Black Lives Matter website. You would find people of color, immigrant groups telling their slavery. But has somebody told the slavery of the graciousness and the help that the same whites have given? As I must say, I fully agree with Trump that there are nice people on both sides, that there are people who are bad on both sides. But why do the racists pick up only negative stories? Because they want to further their own agenda. Have conversations, have people discussed this issue. No, they don't. You see, the people who suffer even from racism even normally take it very quietly. I remember a lady and we were walking down. Somebody knew me and came to me and said, "Doctor, why are you walking with this lady?" And lady was going to run away. I caught hold of her head and told him, "Look here, she is much more capable than you are and a much better human being than you are." She was representing her nation. She was an ambassador. But the white couldn't imagine that a highly educated man could be friendly with a black woman. That is the racism. You have got to keep in mind that everybody has a right of expression until and unless it hurts. So the chanting of the slogan doesn't hurt, but visible, clear denunciation of my right does hurt. The violence hurts. And then, again, somebody may not shout at you, but his actions, his expressions, which you cannot prove in a court of law, they hurt. So, what we need is more interaction. What we need is more understanding. What we need is a more human attitude. Why should, when we say God created a man in his own image and the man is always destined to be white, why not black? Why not brown? And at the same time, why should the government discriminate against the indigenous people here? They are discriminated against. So, and on the other side, when you welcome outsiders, the way it's happening now, it would definitely cause resentment. So actions have to be taken at all fronts. The government has got to ensure that they do not pamper. I'm not saying don't have them, but don't pamper them. Don't pamper the immigrants and don't pamper the refugees. If you don't pamper them, the whites would not be that racist. And let there be no mercy shown to the racist then. So it is a two-way approach. On the first side, don't hurt them. On the other side, if still they indulge in the actions, punish them. We tend to gloss over. In a fit of political correctness, we punish anybody. Islamophobia. It was the word itself is an expression of suppression of rights. Why criticism of Islam should not be welcome? No, welcome it as long as it's not hurting others. Islam, as a matter of fact, the commentaries on Quran and Muhammad by the Islamic scholars are too many. Look at Bukhari, what he did. So, it has to be an expression which, as long as it doesn't hurt, should be welcome. But at the same time, the moment you heard the heavy arm of law should descend. But Canada today as it is, does suffer from racism. Canada today as it is, does have undercurrents of racism that flow violently at times, quietly at others. The need is to stop these currents by training, by interaction, and not by just lip service as is being done by the politicians. Thank you.